Hey Wargamers, as you likely know, Games Workshop has released the latest data slate for Warhammer 40k, and of course that includes a whole bunch of changes to the core rules and individual point updates for each faction. For Tau Empire, there's a few things to keep in mind here. One is that the changes to the core rules are relatively minor for us. The one big thing for us that we might want to keep in mind is that you can now disembark after coming in from reserve in a vehicle. So if you have a bunch of breachers and a devilfish, for example, having them come in off the board, they can jump out and unload their pulse blasters right away. Now, that's relatively minor because most of the time our breachers are going to be on the board to begin with, in a devilfish many times, but still on the board at the start of the game. And so coming in off of a reserve, disembarking then, generally isn't going to be a massive component of most people's strategies. This might be more of a thing depending on what happens with the new codex, specifically with what happens to Kroot. If Kroot end up having some sort of vehicle, maybe we use them more in reserve and that sort of thing. They still can't charge after disembarking from reserves, but they could potentially shoot and have other utility there. So something to keep in mind, pay attention to, given the proximity of the new codex. A lot of this is going to be up in the air until then anyway, and so we really want to keep this in mind for that new codex more than anything. As far as the index that we have for points changes, commanders went down to 80, enforcers went down to 90. That change there is helpful and offsets a little bit the changes to crisis suits. So crisis suits went up to 67 points apiece. So that's a unit of 3 for 200 or a unit of 6 for 400. And so you gain a little bit back from these commander changes, notably not for Cold Stars or for Farsight, but you do get a little bit of incentive here to take maybe an Enforcer or a Crisis Commander as opposed to a Cold Star with this points change. Riptides go down to 165 and Vespid down to 13 each. So both of those are kind of nice little bumps down for both of those. As far as the Math Hammer goes, this basically changes nothing. It does, of course, affect the unit efficiency of each of these. Things that cost less are more efficient now. That's true. But as far as relative differences between potential options, particularly when we're considering crisis suits versus riptides, we don't see this being a big swing in Riptide's favor across the board. There are very few places where this actually makes a difference for the top 5, 6, 7 choices that you might want to consider for any one opponent. And so it's really not that big of a deal. The one thing where we do see this make a bigger difference is for Riptides against Toughness 6 or Toughness 7 models. There we see the Riptide with the Ion Accelerator do notably better than it would have otherwise. So it moves up a couple rungs on the ladder, but it's still not completely moving from someplace where you wouldn't want to consider at all before to someplace where it's a shoe-in now. They're all relatively mild changes. And so what this means for your army as a whole is that you probably are still going to be taking a lot of the same things that you'd be taking anyway, or at least previously. It's not a major shakeup, but maybe now you want to just, give that Riptide a little bit more of a consideration than I had before. Vespids still are doing the whole Vespid thing, right? They're still relatively, glass cannons type of unit that you can drop in for, objectives and, kind of things like that. But Riptides are really the place where we see some sort of meaningful shift. And so, maybe you switch a little bit more towards taking a Riptide instead of, multiple units of Crisis Suits, something like that. 1 unit of Crisis Suits, 1 Riptide, that sort of thing. I don't think this is a shoe-in for taking Triptide now as opposed to, not taking Triptide before, that sort of thing. Vespid still have their value as they did before, but again, it's more of a strategic thing, and these point changes really just modulate how much of an army you're actually able to bring, more so than changing the composition of it. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Does this really change your mind about anything, or is it just kind of, like I said, modulating slight adjustments to your list based on your total budget? So let me know what you think, and of course, happy wargaming. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you stuck around to this point of the video, maybe you want to join our Discord community as well. There's a link in the description below. Special thanks to all my supporters over on Patreon, but especially the folks that you see on your screen now. If you want to help make more invasive wargaming videos, consider joining our community over there as well.